Right, well, can we make a start? So it's great that, really happy that Alpkit are able to support this. Very kind of proud to be part of, passionate about, access to the outdoors, not just on land, but on the water especially. So let me introduce you to Kate Rue, who many of you know is the OSS founder, author of the Outdoor Swimming Handbook and veteran swim trespasser, which is very apt for this webinar. Over to you, Kate.
Hello everyone, 169 people in joining. So I'm really delighted to have you all here tonight. As some of you will know, the Outdoor Swimming Society was founded in 2006 to normalise the idea of swimming in rivers and lakes, like anywhere and everywhere, as long as it was outside. And we are founded on a firm belief that people have a natural right to swim in a lake or river, free of charges, restrictions and rules. And for many years, many of us have exercised that right, kind of, as we please, swimming surreptitiously, harmlessly, wherever we wanted. I think, to many of us, swimming freely in nature is as normal as taking a walk in the countryside. The OSS have always understood that with the right to swim freely comes a responsibility to do it safely. So we've kind of got two twin pillars that we've always remained focused on, which is giving people both the inspiration and the information to swim. You don't need a lifeguard if you can look after yourself, and neither do landowners need to put up no swimming signs, as they're not liable for any mistakes that we might make. Millions of people have joined us over the years. The popularity of swimming, as we're probably all aware, has absolutely exploded recently, which is great. But perhaps surprisingly, it makes it a really dangerous time for outdoor swimming. Media and commercial narratives have emerged, which are kind of attempting to commodify our passion, turn it into something to be controlled, tamed, sold and standardized. Even the positive narratives, such as the potential benefits for mental health, have their dangers, as they can be used to frame swimming as a transaction and the places that we swim as places of business. And that really isn't the point for most swimmers. Swimming is so many things to so many people, but at its core, for most of us, it's an immersion in nature and a very amateur pursuit, something that's done just for the love of it and the experience of it. We're not separate from nature when we swim, we're part of it, and we should not have to pay for it any more than we should pay for a walk in the woods. So we believe a clear right to roam is important for everybody. There's a widespread collective recognition at the moment that we all need more nature in our lives as both a physical and a spiritual space, and also that nature needs us to fix things with the planet, which brings us as an organisation at a very strange point for free wild spirits, that to do what we want to do, we need to engage with the kind of legalese and the small print. There aren't many big water bodies where I live in Somerset, so everyone assumes that when I'm training for something or kind of in a swimming part of my life that I swim in an open water lake down the road. I don't, not that often. The water's really lovely there. It's like so clean that, I kind of want to drink it. But to swim there, I need to join a queue of cards to get in, pay £7, wait till 9 AM, take my own lifeguard swimmer, sign a disclaimer. Honestly, for me, it's like a death from 1,000 paper cuts. The admin takes longer than the actual swim itself, and I just can't fit it into like my family life. So I prefer to swim at a reservoir, which is just down the road. It's free. I can turn up at 7 AM or 9 PM. I can cycle there. And if I lived in Scotland, that would be absolutely fine. I'd probably have a whole new bunch of swimming mates that I'd met there by now. But here in England, it's not allowed. And it should be. We really believe that nature belongs to all of us. So really welcome to tonight. Please tell us where you trespass in the comments and why. And get behind this movement as the OSS and the Right to Roam strive to make a difference. I do want to say a massive thanks to Alpkit for hosting this night and making it happen. And please settle in and enjoy the night ahead.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Kate, for that typically understated and eloquent and lovely introduction. I think really you should just print that out, put that online somewhere, and we should just all hang up this call and go for a swim, because as always, you've hit the nail on the head. It was fantastic. For those of you who don't know, by the way, Kate is the high priestess of wild swimming and one of my early adventuring heroes. This book of hers, Wild Swim, got me seriously hooked on wild swimming back in the day. And her new book, The Outdoor Swimmer's Handbook, is a proper labor of love of everything anyone could possibly want to know about swimming in the outdoors. So thank you so much as always, Kate, for everything. And thank you for bringing us ragtag bunch of disorganized people together. Thank you. Speaking of books, I've also very much recently enjoyed Amy Jane Beer's book, The Flow. I'm sorry it's on a boring old Kindle, which misses out the lovely artwork from some reprobate cover artist, but this book was absolutely fantastic. It was a mix of travel, adventure, nature, activism. I loved it. It was brilliant. And whilst I'm blowing smoke up people's backsides, this book, if you haven't read it, from Mr. Nick Hayes, look how many notes I've taken in this. This book, seriously, I put this book up there with Feral, Eating Animals, and An Uninhabitable Earth for books that have genuinely changed the way I look at the world. So we've got some great people here tonight. Owen and Imogen and Nathan, I haven't read your Magnus Opuses yet, but hopefully one day I will. So thank you, all of you guys, for giving up your time and your expertise to be here. Please, everyone, put all your questions in the chat. With all these expert people here, we're going to really struggle to get through everything in time. So I'm hoping they will all give very brief but brilliant answers, and that the behind the scenes technical experts will be answering all your questions in the chat. So enough about me in my Outdoor Swimming Society hoodie, you might notice. I'm going to launch in with Nick, first of all. Nick, can you introduce yourself, tell us who you are, and maybe, I mean, originally, and actually in your books, mostly you've been working about access to the land. So when did you start to realize that water access was also an issue involved in all this? And while you talk, I'm going to take off my Outdoor Swimming Society hoodie because it's too hot. It's such good quality.
Well, hello, everyone. Thanks very much for having us. Thanks for Alpkit for hosting us, and Al. Yeah, my name's Nick Hayes. I'm an illustrator mainly, but I wrote a book called The Book of Trespass, and then that we kind of, me and old guy Shrubsole, set up the Right to Roam campaign to launch on the same day as the book, so that we could get basically the publicity for the book, just shunt it onto the campaign and kind of get the wheel turning, which is a polite way of saying revolution, I suppose. It's kind of worked. Like Right to Roam have sort of broadened from just two cis white boys, Oxbridge educated, kind of broadened out to just basically people with expertise. And Amy Jane Beer is one of those. Very cool that she could be here tonight as well. And so we now have about 8, 9, 10 kind of core members of the team. But we've also got about 30 kind of local trespass groups all over the country, including Scotland. A couple in Wales, and then you know, from London to Cornwall to Dartmoor to Manchester to Newcastle. The movement's growing. It's kind of worked. The momentum is there, and I don't even know. I grew up by the Thames, basically, so it's big old wide river that you've got access to, and I now live on it. And even now, you know, it's been in terms of people, it's been very quiet for the last few months, but now it's just people paddleboarding by, people kayaking, mostly middle-aged women still swimming all through the winter. I get in every day, mainly because I still haven't plumbed in my shower. And I've just been used to freedom as if it was a God-given right, which of course it is. But then I only realized the I guess the tightness, the absurd tightness that exists around waterways and watercourses and basic blue space, reservoirs, lakes, rivers, when I was visiting other rivers for the book and then for the campaign. And I suppose I've got to just, the final thing to say is just, for me, the level of absurdity is at its pitch when it comes to our restriction from blue space. And thus, the answer lies in paddleboarders, swimmers, kayakers, and people that are drawn to blue space for all the obvious reasons. If we can make swimming the core of our campaign, I personally would be very happy, because since a double knee injury, that's the only thing I can do to stave off the pot belly. But it's something that's core to England, and so, you know, what we really need to do is motivate people to go out and express their love of swimming, regardless of the razor wire that's been put up to prevent us.
Brilliant. Thank you, Nick. Right, I'm going to zoom around the rest of the panel now to get an introduction on who we've got here today. So each of you, I'll call on you and point at you on my screen. That's great. I'll point at you. I'll call on you one at a time. And what would be great, actually, just to give a flavour of who you are to the audience, for anyone who doesn't know you. So to tell us who you are and what your role in all of this is, and perhaps if you have a handy example of a swimming trespass you've done that means a lot to you, and perhaps one real benefit that you feel that expanding water access can do for people. So Nathan, do you want to kick us off with who you are and what your mission on this is, and what's the benefit of the wild swimming, the outdoor access stuff you're doing?
So hi Al, and hi everyone. So I'm a lawyer, and I give free legal advice to the Outdoor Swimming Society. I also love being in the outdoors, and the place that I love to be is the Lake District, Cumbria, and the place that I wish that I could swim without trespassing is Thirlmere, the reservoir that used to be two lakes that was joined to make a reservoir many years ago, which is a beautiful, beautiful waterway, and which is, because it's a reservoir in England and rather than in Scotland, it's considered to be dangerous to swim there, whereas exactly the same reservoir in Scotland, there would be a right to swim there. And I'd love to see that right extended to the whole of the United Kingdom.
Brilliant. Thank you, Nathan. Imogen, what about you? What's your name and where'd you come from?
Imogen Radford. I'm based in Norfolk. I'm one of the inland access officers for the Outdoor Swimming Society. So Access is my middle name. Rivers is my other middle name, because they're my favourite. I absolutely love rivers. The complexity of rivers and the rights to, or otherwise, is so complicated. I won't even start on that, except that almost anywhere in a river might be called a trespass. So all my favourite river spots near me, they're a few miles away. I pop along, I have a swim, absolutely enjoy the nature, sometimes solitude, sometimes in groups. And I'm not doing anyone any harm. I'm having a lovely time. And more importantly than that, as well as me having a lovely time and all my friends, we're picking up litter, we're, you know, keeping an eye on the place and that sort of thing. So yeah, I just love it.
Brilliant. Thank you, Imogen. Amy Jane, welcome. What's your role in all of this?
Thanks, Al. Lovely to be here. So I am a biologist and a writer. As Nick's already said, I'm part of the core team of Right to Roam these days. And my relationship with water came first from kayaking. I was a whitewater kayaker for many years, and my swimming was kind of accidental in those days, wearing a suit, when I'd got tipped out of my boat. But these days, yes, it's more about the swimming for me. The dry suit has gone, the wetsuit has gone, and I swim mainly in my local river, which is about 300 metres that way, the Yorkshire Derwent, which is the river in the country that's had its right of access and navigation most challenged. The access was revoked in the 1930s, and a challenge from a bunch of developers and the local council in Malton in the 80s and 90s went all the way to the House of Lords. They wanted to reopen the river for boating, to build a marina, and that challenge was denied in the end, but that had the effect of banning everybody, not just the pleasure boats and not just the developers, but the kayakers and the swimmers. So now we're all trespassers every time.
Brilliant. Thank you, Amy Jane. Right, over to Owen. Owen, is that a lovely sprig of blackthorn blossom I see in the background? Can you introduce yourself, show us your flower arrangements, and tell us what you're up to?
Hi, Al, thanks. Yeah, so my name's Owen Hayman. I'm on the Inland Access team at the Outdoor Swimming Society, and I founded SOUP, Sheffield Outdoor Plungers, which is a big group in Sheffield that started 5-6 years ago. We've got around 13,000 people in the group now. And I'm a gardener, and I currently work as a landscape manager in Sheffield. So we do we manage parks and green spaces, we design and manage them and build them. And yeah, I picked some flowers today. We've got Narcissus poeticus, Leucodium aestivum, and Prunus spinosa on the table there. But yeah, so reservoirs, that's basically where I trespass, because that's all around where we live in Sheffield. There's roughly kind of 10 to 15 reservoirs within easy reach of the city. Some of them are reachable by bus, some of them you can walk to or cycle to from the city centre. And around the kind of north of England, so between, you know, if you were to draw a line between Leeds, Liverpool, Sheffield, Manchester, there's around kind of 8 or 9 million people living in that area, and there's a few hundred reservoirs in that area that are really accessible to people. You're not allowed to swim in any single one of them apart from Sparth Reservoir, where there's been this kind of long history of people swimming, and then it's been a real kind of access success story, having there been an effort to try to stop swimmers about 10 years ago, and a successful campaign kind of overturned that. So yeah, reservoirs are particularly where I like swimming, and also quarry lakes. I really like swimming in quarries, especially deserted quarries, ideally long deserted quarries, and I love how crystal clear the water is in those places. And I love industrial places, and how they get returned to nature, and how nature makes it their home after we've done something that seemed very destructive at the time.
Brilliant. Thank you, Owen. It's crazy, isn't it, that swimming pools across the country having to close down at the moment because they can't afford the heating bills, and there's queues of kids queuing up outside to get into swimming pools and smell of wee, and then there's all this lovely stuff, and mad. Anyway, you don't need me to tell you that. Right, so what I'm going to do now is we're going to go open up a bit of discussion. I'm going to go around the panel and ask each of you about your more specific areas of expertise. So this is a chance for you to pour out your genius on whatever really gets you mad, but in a concise and brief sort of way. Otherwise, if you talk too long, I'll get my... This means you've been talking too long. So I'm going to start with Nathan, with the pig looming over him. So Nathan's the Outdoor Swimming Society's legal advisor. What is the Outdoor Swimming Society looking for out of all this, in a nutshell?
So I think in England and Wales, we're looking very enviously at the position in Scotland. So it's 18 years now since the Land Reform Scotland Act 2003 was passed, and it came into force in 2005. And that really conferred a right to swim in rivers, lochs, canals and reservoirs in Scotland. There's a Scottish Outdoor Access Code that says, effectively, if you're using those areas, you have to exercise those access rights responsibly. And that encompasses a range of different areas: taking responsibility for your own actions, respecting people's privacy and their peace of mind, caring for your environment, and taking extra care if you're organizing a group, an event, or running a business. But essentially conferring those rights to swim in those public spaces in a way that is safe and respects the rights of other users of that water. And when in England and Wales, the Countryside Rights of Way Act was passed, that didn't extend to those similar waterways. And there is now a real movement towards it, changing that law in England and Wales to reflect the position in Scotland. And it's something that there's currently a private members bill that Caroline Lucas MP has put before Parliament. Jim McMahon MP from Labour has said that if Labour comes into power, they will introduce similar legislation. And you know, in my mind, there's this question mark: is why is it that swimming in reservoirs in England is considered to be so dangerous? Those that are responsible for the reservoirs put out these messages as to the dangers of reservoirs. Whereas in Scotland, when you look at the statistics, actually swimming in reservoirs is incredibly safe. And having these areas open for swimmers will enable people to use those areas properly, safely, and to the extent there are dangers, to have those flagged up and made clear to those that want to use those areas as areas for swimming. So that's really what I would like to see change. And I think it's really exciting that there's now real momentum towards that change.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned Caroline Lucas. She's a sort of great green champion of all these sorts of good things. Labour perhaps have more chance of winning the next election than Caroline does. And they're at the moment at least saying that they're quite keen to support the right to roam. What do you think in terms of your idealism versus their sort of pragmatic reluctance? What can you optimistically hope that this might go from a legal sense?
I think that the model in Scotland, the fact that there's been 18 years to see how it has worked there, means that there's really no good reason why that shouldn't be introduced to the rest of the UK. The law at the moment is in England and Wales is a real mess in terms of where do you have a right to swim in terms of rivers, in terms of lakes. There is so much uncertainty, and that leads to real disagreements between landowners, anglers, canoeists, swimmers, other water users, that can so easily be clarified with this relatively simple change to the law and just adopting a model that's already working very, very well in Scotland.
It's very nice to me to be speaking to a lawyer without just pouring money out of my pockets every 10 seconds at you. So I'm going to make the most of this by saying that I think for a lot of people who go roaming in the wild or swimming in the wild, the intimidating keep out signs or trespassers will be prosecuted signs are quite alarming and off-putting to a lot of people. And I think one of the main things that puts people off trespassing is that sense of getting told off, or worse, getting clapped in jail. So could you give us a bit of free legal advice on the reality of the keep out trespassers will be prosecuted signs?
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, talking about trespassers make people sound very wicked, but trespass is not a criminal offence. It is it's a civil tort, and so if you go and trespass somewhere, then to the extent that you cause loss to the landowner, they could then recover that loss from you. But the reality is, you go and swim somewhere, and there is no loss that is suffered. It is only a criminal matter if you go there in order to cause damage, in order to prevent other people's lawful use of that property. And so, the reality is that every day people trespass, often without knowing it, and there is no consequence whatsoever. I think the key thing is, if you are on someone else's land and they ask you to leave, then at that point, then leaving is the appropriate thing to do, rather than causing a confrontation. But that is something that is in itself very, very few and far between. And so if you're exercising rights to swim in rivers, in terms of lakes, equally in terms of reservoirs, then that is something that people do on a daily basis, as others have already said, and which is not something that is going to cause significant legal consequences.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Nathan. It's interesting how much this sort of hangs over us, because in all of my years of wild camping and bivvying and wandering through woods and swimming in rivers, I've never once been told to leave someone's land. I've been shouted at a few times, but never been told to leave land. But even so, these signs they have a disproportionate impact on our perception of what we're doing out there. So yeah, it's good to have that clarified.
And just very quickly, I think that landowners put those signs up because they have this perception that it protects them in some way. And the reality is that whenever anyone goes swimming, like many other outdoor activities, carries its own risks. And when we decide to go swimming, you assume those risks. And the law is very clear that it's individuals, adults who go swimming, assume those risks for themselves. And it's your own assumption of that risk, rather than the landowner having to be responsible for you. It would only be if there's some exceptional risk that wouldn't be obvious that the landowner would have some sort of duty to bring that to your attention. But in reality, whenever we go swimming, we accept those risks, and we have to make our own assessment as to whether we're comfortable swimming in a particular area, but that's a matter for us as individuals rather than a matter of liability for the landowner.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you for clarifying that. And actually, I really like the personal responsibility access of wild swimming. I think it probably links onto other adventurous things, but I really like that I'm here and I'm making these measured and informed choices for myself. Right, Nick, we move on to you now. Thank you, Nathan. Nick, you're much more onto the sort of cultural side and the social side of campaigning. What are the main challenges you face in trying to get across the cultural message to try and gain enough critical mass of people being interested in this stuff to make a difference? You look like you're about to fall asleep, Nick. You all right?
I'm all right. Yeah, I'm just a very loose individual. You know, this is how I do job interviews.
That's why you're unemployed.
Yeah. Yeah, writing was a handy safety net to just not giving a fuck. Culture is orthodoxy, really. You know, I would say that the landowners are the least of it. I would say because you never see them. They don't even live where you're swimming. You know, they just own 7 miles of it, so they live in a nice mansion down the road, kind of thing. You'll never see the landowners, and it's not even worth getting angry about them because there's so few of them that they literally don't constitute a barrier. They're incredibly powerful men, but they're not anything as powerful as a conscious populace, basically. They're like fishermen are laboring under the idea that they have a kind of moral superiority because they've simply purchased it off a landowner. You know, your access to rivers has been commercialized by the most, you know, boring capitalist trick in the book, which is to reduce your access to something and then sell it back to you. You know, classic. The real issue we have, I suppose, is this orthodoxy that A, that you're doing something wrong, and that B, that humans are something other than the environment. And this is where we go straight from legalese straight into the spiritual. You know, what we're doing next year, maybe Amy will say a bit more about it, but is really trying to dash to smithereens this notion that say wild swimming or wild camping is a recreation. It's not. Connecting with nature is connecting to ourselves. Some humans are a threat to nature, but if you look at the statistics, if you look at the wider perspective, it's not the wild swimmer pouring pesticides into our rivers. It's not the wild swimmer deoxygenating it. It's the shareholders and the profit drive that is causing all of the sewage well, the lack of infrastructure that causes the sewage to pour into our rivers. We're going bold next year, and we're basically telling people that they are nature, and that the thing to do is to be attentive and porous to the specific locality of where you are. Use your ears and use your eyes before you use your feet or your mouth, kind of thing. We need to become porous animals, and we need to be aware of our environment before, well, as we immerse ourselves in it. So I would say that's in terms of the cultural shift, we need to follow indigenous knowledge, you know, the sort of Maori or First Nations, Canada or North America, this idea that actually connecting to nature is simply connecting to this kind of relational, not transaction, a relational kinship, basically, that whereby we owe in a complete cycle of what we are owed, you know, rights and responsibilities. And it's not one followed by the other. It's a constant circle of feeding back into the system that benefits you. So that's next year's work.
Okay. You get a lot done for a man who slouches a lot. I'm very impressed.
Maybe it's maybe that's why I'm slouching. Maybe I am tired.
Yeah, you can slouch. Now I'm going to ask Amy Jane a question. It's interesting that this notion of humans and nature, and that we're physically separated from it by barbed wire fences, but also this sort of mental disconnect that increasingly we've got, that we think that we are somehow different from nature, which causes spectacular problems from farming to all these sort of things. And I just when you were answering then, I grabbed this book off my shelf. It's a new book by Miles Richardson about reconnection, which is really good, about if you're interested in nature connectedness. Amy Jane, I want to ask you a bit more from this about the sort of nature, wildlife, sciencey side of things, and I suppose it links on from that answer then about how access to water is important for connecting with nature and the sort of spin-off impacts of that.
For me, being immersed in water, particularly if you're not separated from it with a suit, it is pure full body connection. You know, our skin is the largest organ in the human body, and you really know about it when you're in a cold river or a cold lake. It just it wipes everything else away, and it makes very clear to you that you are part of this system, this world. And that was a very profound shift for me when I went from being a wetsuited occasional dipper to someone that would just slide into the water wearing nothing at all. I felt that I belonged there with the fish and the newts that I came nose to nose with on a sunny day when it was sunbathing in that centimetre of warm water at the top. It was kind of spreading itself out so it could kind of, in the same way that we sometimes do, kind of maximally warm itself. And you feel a sense of outrage on their behalf at the condition that our rivers are in, at the way they are being systematically abused. And one of the things that enrages me most is when people say, oh, I can't believe you get in the river, they're all filthy, they're all full of shit. What are you doing? That is used as a sort of stick to beat wild swimmers with, as a reason that we shouldn't be doing it, as though it's somehow our fault, that amplifies the transgression in some way by daring to risk ourselves. I have been sick once after being in a river. That was years ago when I was kayaking. It's actually really rare. There are some rivers where I look and think, I won't open my mouth today. There are others that I have literally drunk from as I've swum. So you learn to tell, look for the signs of whether it's the condition of the water. So when I'm kind of split between now. I'm straddling the scientific life that I've not left behind, but that was my kind of my training, with this much more kind of emotional and personal and relational relationship that I have with the natural world. I'm still capable of rationalizing and sort of digging around doing the research, but I'm also very open to feeling what's right, and I think swimming feels right, and you become acutely aware of what's wrong from the community's perspective, from the ecological community perspective when you're in the water. There's a reason that it's swimmers leading the awareness raising of the condition of rivers and the change that needs to be made.
Absolutely. I think there's a sign. It's a sign of how crazy things have gone. That well, firstly, that our rivers are in a state where it is often people deem it not good to go in because they're so appallingly polluted by ridiculous water companies, but also that just the general public, that normal people think that swimming in a river is kind of weird, but going to swim in a swimming pool full of chlorine, verruca plasters and wee is normal and nice and fine, and that a river is somehow gross. I mean, there's so much that is wrong in that single summary there. Imogen, in terms of your work with the OSS of trying to get people out to swim, what do you think that public education is a big part in this? And if so, how do we do that beyond just preaching to the choir of the hundreds of people who are listening tonight who all kind of agree with everything we're all saying?
Well, I think the Outdoor Swimming Society information they put out, which the website is absolutely packed with a whole range of articles about all different aspects of safety and other things. And that can be seen publicly straight away, but it also goes out more widely. And I think one of the most powerful things we have as swimmers is the local groups. So I worked out there's roughly about 1 million people in Britain in little local swim groups, informal ones, and they share information, OSS and other information. But it's not just them, it's not I don't think it is preaching to the converted at all, because a lot of them are very new to it. But of course, they're people who've got their own families, their friends. They obviously they spread that information. So their friends actually will say to them, why are you swimming? It's not safe, or something like that. And they'll say, no, but I read this and this explains it. So it spreads out. And also we influence people by example as well. You know, we're at a swim spot. I mean, a friend of mine recently, a local swimmer, told me this story only the other day, and this is not uncommon. A group of lads came down after school. They were going to jump in. She said, well, wait a minute, just, get in a bit easy, just gave them some basic info, and they took it on board. And so that sort of thing, I think that happens all the time. So I do think it's important. I think people do need to understand how to stay safe, but how to keep themselves safe, not how to rely on other people, such as lifeguards or whatever. So yeah, it's really important. And like Kate said earlier, our responsibility to look after the environment goes along with our responsibility to keep ourselves safe and perhaps help others who, haven't heard about some of this stuff, because it's so alien to them over generations. People haven't been allowed to get in and find out about it themselves. And hopefully that's beginning to change now, and will change more as more and more people hear about it and give it a go. And as I say, these swim groups and those kind of little local communities help with that, enabling people.
So what do you think you can be done? So Owen mentioned earlier, there's this sort of belt of the north of England, which is both beautiful countryside, but also pretty heavily populated with all these reservoirs. But the mismatch perhaps between all these reservoirs that are available to swim in, a public who perhaps doesn't safely know how to swim in it, and some officials who are very worried about the implications of that. What do you think can be done to square those circles?
Well, I think hand over to Owen on this particular one, but I think we can give them info, as I said, really, I think if we could possibly persuade those landowners or organisations that run it to allow access. I mean, it's not really necessarily, they don't, like Nathan explained earlier, it's people's own responsibility to keep themselves safe. They don't have to keep us safe, but the fact that they ban it makes it really difficult for them or anyone else to spread those messages, because there's this, as you say, there's this mismatch. If they don't allow people in, they don't allow the information to get to people. So, but Owen's done some really good work on this. Yeah,
well, yeah. Go on then, Owen. Do you want to? I was about to launch in with a bit of a Sheffield Outdoor Plungers as well. So do you want to? I tell you what, let me ask you my question about Sheffield Outdoor Plunge, and perhaps you can add anything to Imogen on top of that, because I think what you've been doing is a wonderful, good news success story about community, growing a tribe, everything that's fantastic about outdoor swimming. I'll let you elaborate, but can you just tell us all what you've been up to? You got up to 13,000 people in your group. What have you been doing? What's its success? Why is it working? How can it be replicated? Anything else Imogen hasn't said? Answer all those questions. Go.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Soup started about 6 years ago, roughly, and it was kind of born out of other swim groups around the north, like Flows, which was in Leeds, which is the fabulous Leeds Outdoor and Wild Swimmers, and there was other groups around the area that were kind of an inspiration. And Sheffield didn't have anything like that. And there was kind of, on the kind of map of places to swim, it was very, very thinly populated. There was a few kind of plunge pools in rivers that were quite hard to get to. And this is where everyone would descend, everyone from Sheffield would go to this one tiny little spot. And on the way to driving to this tiny distant little river plunge pool in the Peak District, they would drive past lovely, huge, majestic reservoirs that had car parks and bus stops by them, and they had ample space and stone banks where lots of people could access the water without causing erosion. and the water there was still, and the water level went up and down, and you could see what hazards were there. So, you know, on their way to this river swim spot, they drove past all these really safe, really great places where they could be swimming. They were also a lot closer to Sheffield. And I just thought, you know, this is crazy. And I had moved from Swansea, where I'd grown up by the sea, and I'd always swum in the sea. And I didn't really understand winter swimming, but I did it before I knew it was a thing. And I would just like run in frantically and run out again. And I was doing that when I came to Sheffield in Freshers Week. The first thing I did was I cycled out and I found Redmars Reservoir, and I went for a swim in it, and I cycled back. And when I cycled back and said, I've been to the Peak District, it was as if I'd gone to the moon. You know, people couldn't believe that I'd made it out there. And but yeah, so lots of inspiring groups in the area. I set up a group. I started swimming in quite a few of the reservoirs, and especially in Crooks Valley Park, which is right in the centre of Sheffield, this amazing park with really clear water. It's a historic reservoir. It's not a reservoir anymore. It's almost 200 years old, I think. And out of the woodwork came these, you know, really talented, you know, really experienced swimmers who were in the city, who all kind of knew each other, and some of them were adventure swimmers, and some of them were kind of, you know, had done the channel, these kind of people, and other people were just really passionate, you know, wild swimmers who've been doing it for decades, and they kind of helped me get the ball rolling, and the community grew. But I think that the most important thing with growing a community successfully and bringing about change, one is to make it open and provide resources. So I let people know exactly where I swam. I made a map. I provided the information that people needed, as much information as I could give. I made it very clear that this was very informal, and that, you know, I can't tell them what is and isn't safe. They need to make that assessment, but here's as much information as I've got. Here it is on a map. This is what the access is like. This is where the nearest bus stop is. These are the ones that are maybe you could do if you're, you know, a bit less mobile. These are the ones that are a bit more of a walk. And then I just shared it publicly all over Facebook, all over Instagram, and encouraged people to come and be part of it. And then also had the whole responsibility side too. So making sure there's this good community feeling that we all knew it was our shared responsibility to look after places. There are some places that we don't have on our map. They're just, you know, if you discover them for yourself, that's fine, but we're not going to put them on the map because they're quite sensitive and they don't really need any extra help, you know, encouraging people to go to them. And then the second thing was getting loads of admins. So the group is run by a whole team of people. There's probably around 20. I'm just looking at my partner. He's one of them. He does all the work now. I just let him get on with it, and then I take all the glory. So that's really essential, you know, delegate to someone. But, you know, having lots of people to look after the group, to just have that, you know, we try and manage it with a really light touch. If you ask us a question, can we do something? We're generally going to say, yes, get on with it. You know, we really want people to make this their own. But any group does need that little bit of attention. You know, it's like a garden. You just need to do that little bit of weeding out here and then. And that just keeps the whole thing thriving.
It grows. Yeah. Well, I think what you've done is amazing. I'd like to have an entire Zoom webinar on how to launch awesome community groups with not just you, but with Amy, Jane, Nick as well, just to get these grassroots movements going. I want to move now to talking about Kinder Scout. And Kinder Scout 100 years ago it's sort of a totemic central point in the land access movements in England and Wales. There's 100 years ago, bunch of people went trespassing up on the grouse moors. They got in all sorts of trouble, but from that led on to the national parks and some much more conversations about access. And it's a really important place for anyone who's interested in right to roam and access. And Amy, can you tell me give us a bit of info about what's going on related to Kinder this coming weekend? I know it's not an official right to roam or OSS event, but what's going on?
Well, it's not something that we can claim credit for organising, but we are supporting it from the margins. But yes, in celebrating the anniversary of the Kinder Trespass, the swim trespass that's taken place on Kinder Reservoir on the weekend. I'm not even sure if it's Saturday or Sunday. I'm sorry for being so.
It's on Sunday.
It's Sunday, brilliant. I'm not able to attend for family reasons, but I will absolutely be there in spirit. So yeah, it's probably better if Owen gives the lowdown on that, because I'm sure you're hoping for a good turnout.
Yeah, cheers. I'm happy to give a bit of information. So yeah, 12 o'clock on the Sunday, we'll be swimming at the kind of eastern end of the reservoir, which is the furthest side away from the dam wall. If anyone wants to find information on it, then go on the Outdoor Swimming Society Instagram page. You can also go on the Right to Roam Instagram page or the Soup Instagram page, and you'll find in the most recent few posts, you'll find some posts which show the information of exactly where we're meeting. It's a little walk up from Hayfield, so give yourself plenty of time. I'd give yourself about an hour. It's a little bit steep and bumpy. There'll be a lot of people walking up from Hayfield because of the anniversary weekend. So this happens every year on the anniversary of the Kinder Trespass. Loads of people just go and they go and exercise their right to go up Kinder and celebrate it and enjoy that. So there'll be lots of different types of people there. Last year, we were blown away by just how many groups of young ramblers and young hikers there were. And they all met on Discord, which is a social media platform that I really need to get on. Talking about starting a community, these days it's all changed, and Facebook groups is perhaps not actually the place to aggregate a community anymore. And I'm really struggling with that. I'm clutching onto Facebook groups.
You're getting old, Owen. It happens to all of us.
I know, I'm getting old on Facebook. I'm one of those.
Yeah.
So if you want to come, what I would say is there's lots of different ways to approach it. You can come from Edale and walk all the way over. That's going to take a little bit longer, and you can get a train to Edale. Again, if you go on the post on the OSS page, you'll find lots of suggested access points. What I will say is it's very unlikely that you'd be able to park in Hayfield on the Sunday, but what you can do is go to places like New Mills or Thornset. So these are villages that are to the west of Hayfield, and then you can walk along the Set Valley Trail, which is a nice flat old train line, and you can walk along and come into Hayfield, and that way we can kind of spread out parking or people arriving by other means and then come into Hayfield. And then on the Saturday, so the day before, there'll be talks, panel discussions. I'll be taking part. There'll be lots of people on panel discussions in Hayfield. So it's a whole weekend.
Fantastic. So if you can be anywhere near the Peak District this weekend, check all those trendy online platforms that Owen just mentioned. Thank you. It'd be great to get a good turnout there. Imogen, why are large participation flagship sort of events like this important?
Well, I think they just bring attention to it. I hope that people will do trespasses. Those that can't get to Kinder will do them in their own area. It makes a point. It normalizes it and makes the point that we swim. I mean, I think people should do it every day, actually, but not necessarily. I mean, obviously, you've got to be sensitive about where you go. I mean, don't choose a little tiny river and have 300 people there. That's not responsible. So if you're thinking of doing a bit of a bigger event, try and there's one at Swinsty in the Dales, for example. I believe some people are thinking of doing them elsewhere as well. So it's a great idea. Yeah, yes. Fly the flag for access.
Good old Stuart Gledhill there cheering on the Dales one. It's good to see. So wherever you are, I'm sure all these aforementioned trendy sites that Owen mentioned will give the details for if you can do a trespass in your own river, your own bit of water, wherever you are, to amplify that message on social media is a really important thing to do. It's really important. So Nathan, maybe you can give us a bit of context then about where we are right now in terms of what rights do we have for swimming in England and Wales, and you can paint a little picture of that and might encourage why people should be going out and joining these events this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. So that would probably take a full day to talk you through how those rights work.
We can't afford a full day of you. Just make it quick.
You've got tidal rivers, and there is generally considered to be a right to swim in terms of tidal waters. There are a whole range of rivers where there is a statutory right to swim. Other rivers where there has been use over time immemorial, and therefore common law rights to swim in areas. And then you have a range of other areas where there is more disputed rights in terms of the question mark over whether there's been sufficient use over the years, whether bylaws have been brought in to prevent swimming in areas. And so, the real problem, as a lawyer, I like certainty. I like to know, is something on the right side of the line or the wrong side of the line? And there are too many areas where, for a range of reasons, there is just that lack of clarity. And I think it would be so easy to make those changes that we talked about earlier through through statutory changes in order to make it very clear that there are those rights. And that will encourage people to use the rivers, the lakes, the reservoirs that are beautiful places to swim, and to feel confident they can do that in a safe way and in a lawful way. And the whole sort of idea, a bit like with Kinder 100 years ago, if anyone's asked now about, is it a good idea or a bad idea to have national parks? You know, there aren't many people that are going to be arguing against national parks, but, you know, it goes through that, that stage of some sort of controversy in terms of legal rights, through to the momentum and the movement for change, and then coming out with something which is a far better and happier outcome for everyone. And that's what we'd really like to see in relation to swimming.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so one quick technical question that I hear quite often is, are you allowed to access bodies of water that are on open access land? So there's 8% of the country that's open access, and are you allowed to swim in those waters there?
Well, I mean, in terms of the pure law, there's can you swim in a body of water, and then separately, can you get to the body of water lawfully? And so, you know, you just need to look at those two things separately. So there is no clear answer. It really depends on whether there's that right to swim, you know, from a pure legal sense, whether there is a statutory right, whether it's an area where people have swum over the many years and therefore established common law rights. And then separately, is there that right to get to the water? But, you know, these are sort of questions that people shouldn't be asking of themselves. People should just be able to go and enjoy these waterways. Yeah, and absolutely. So as a lawyer, I'd rather that those weren't really, you know, tricky, complicated legal questions. Thank you, Nathan, for a very lawyerly answer. I suspect Nick, if you hadn't crashed out, would have just said swim free and act if you're free already. I think Owen wants to add something to that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, when I've looked into it, as a rule of thumb, on access land, you do not necessarily have the right to swim in the water there. You have the right to roam across the land, but you don't have the right to roam in the water. So essentially, that access land, you know, your rights of access on access land are only for the land itself, not for the water. And that's, you know, I checked that in the whatever it is, boring legislation that covers that stuff. That Imogen might know the name of. But it was a real shock to me when I found that out, because, as I say, around Sheffield, you're not allowed to swim anywhere, and the few places that people thought you were allowed to swim were on access land. So they thought, oh yeah, you know, we can swim here, it's on access land, and actually they're not. So I always say, you know, those goody two shoes who were all swimming there saying, oh well, we swim here because this is where we're allowed to swim, I could then happily say, actually you're not allowed to swim there, so you may as well go and swim in the reservoir, which is much closer to where you live. Okay, brilliant. Right, we're coming towards the last few minutes here. So just to sort of round things up, each of you come at this access world from different points of view. So I wondered if you'd like to give me a sort of final, let's say, 30-second roundup on your parting message for what you want to say. So I'll give you 30 seconds before you get the pig off. So I'm going to give, with no warning to what to say, I'm going to pluck Amy Jane, first of all.
Oh, 30 seconds. Basically, I would say get involved and think of yourself as a guardian of that place. Think of yourself as a rightful guardian of that place. Your right to be there is balanced by the responsibility you feel and that you act with. People are precious in this resource. You know, as a resource to the river, we can guard it, we can protect it, we can be better for the river than we currently are as a species. You know, be the best of ourselves. You'll feel better for it in every possible way.
Brilliant. Thank you, Amy Jane. Imogen, what are your thoughts on this to wrap up?
Well, I'm not a lawyer, so I can say swim where you like, but with a caveat that do it responsibly. So don't go and, you know, be outrageous, and obviously not in somebody's garden, not where you're doing any damage to the wildlife. But go and swim. And I think it's really, really important that you go and swim. You don't ask permission. You check out the ins and outs of it and the safety, obviously, and you behave responsibly, but you go and swim. And I think you just go and swim. I've noticed some people in the chat talking about this in the other place. Go to those places, go in numbers. That is the only way we win access. And we may not win a yes, you might, and we give you a legal right type access, but you win a recognition. Even in some of these water companies, they are recognizing that people are actually swimming, and there are places where they actually have turned it round and got that right. So if people have got issues, do join the Outdoor Swimming Society's Inland Access group. You can find that on boring old Facebook. It is a bit of a boring group, but it's deliberately so because it's there. It's not boring at all. It's fascinating, but it's there for people to share their experiences of access issues. And we've got a team of us, and actually all the members of the group have got experience they can share to do that. So I don't know where the pig's going, but yeah, please go and swim.
Close.
Yeah, please go and swim, but share experiences so that we can all win.
Brilliant. Thank you, Imogen. Owen, where do you see the Sheffield Outdoor Plungers going a year and 5 years from now? What's your uplifting hope?
Well, I guess, you could say, well, hopefully maybe we won't need it. That's kind of one potential, happy ending is that we're no longer needed. And to be honest, I feel like we're already starting to see it. There's loads of people who just go out and about swimming. They're informed, they're getting on with it, they know lots of places, and they actually don't know what soup is, which I find so offensive. And it really, my ego's just crumbling. But yeah, that's kind of what we want. But what I would say is, we need to remember why we are fighting for access. You might just say, oh, look, we're all swimming. We're all out and about swimming. Why do we need permission? Why do we need someone to say we're allowed to do it? And there's lots of reasons why we need access. But one I would say is there's a lot of people, for whatever reason, for lots of different reasons, who really don't want confrontation, and they don't want to go out and about and face the thought of legal action, anyone of authority coming and challenging them. That is not what you want when you're out and about in nature, in the countryside, where we all belong, where we all have our, a place and a right to that space. And we just want to be ourselves, be part of nature as we are. And we don't want to be feeling this kind of, eye in the distance, who's, someone who's going to come and tell us that we can't be there. And we need to do that for those people, those of us who are confident and who love going out and causing a big disturbance. We need to remember that those people that can't do that, and all the reasons that they can't do it for.
Absolutely. Brilliant. Right, we're just about done now. Nick, you've got 15 seconds to see us off with your heroic leadership.
I'm not a leader.
Oh, sorry, that was a bad choice of words. The moment I said that, I knew you wouldn't like that. Okay, have you got any encouragement?
I'm a bloody anarchist, aren't I?
Yeah, sorry.
Don't follow leaders and watch parking meters. That's Bob Dylan. And basically, go out, but as Imogen said, tell people about it. People have to know that just regular folk are going out not to defy the laws, but to ignore the laws. And when we ignore the laws, we bring our own laws with us, the laws of the commons and reciprocity. We're not to hell with all the laws. We're just to hell with this law that stops us from the natural law, basically. Trespasserscompanion.org is a very good place to record your trespasses. Lots of people have been on there already. But please, even if it's just a tweet, normalize the idea of being outside gently and peacefully and responsibly in blue space, and things will change.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Nick. Thank you to everyone for all of your expertise tonight. Please, everyone, get out there, tell the world what you're doing, have courteous conversations, leave a positive trace in nature everywhere you go, swim free, act as if you're free already. And I'm going to pass over to Nick from Alpkit to close us out. Thank you.
Hi there. I think we've genuinely a massive thank you for that. We've all learned something tonight. I'm sure we can all feel a bit more confident about visiting those special places, and we'd love you to share them. We want you to we've got a competition going. We're going to send a link tomorrow. It's a £100 voucher, and we would love you to share those special places. Perhaps the more daring and the more secret, the better. We're not really after the location. We're genuinely after the inspiration. I think we all want to see those kind of pictures and videos to get a little bit more of that kind of that vibe. And again, big thank you to Nick, to Al, to Kate, Nathan, Imogen, Owen, Amy Jane. It's fantastic. I think looking at all the questions, we're so we just can't wait, can we? I mean, it's just like we said at the beginning, forget the webinar, let's go out and swim. So big thank you. Thanks a lot. That's it. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.